Hello chess friends and welcome to the channel. At the Skidding Open we are still in the preliminary phase where 16 players are fighting for the first 8 spots and the quarterfinals. In today's video the beautiful game played in round 4 between Karjakin and Nakamura. Let's get started. Sergey Karjakin with white pieces opens the game with e4 and Hikaru Nakamura answers with e5. Bishop to c4, so we are in the bishop opening, and now knight to c6. But after knight to c3 the opening becomes a Vienna game, knight to f6 and now d3. We know that it's also possible to begin with the knight jump and take away the bishop pair, but Nakamura instead plays another main line, that is bishop to b4, attacking and pinning the knight. Generally white in this position will play knight in g goes to e2, that develops the knight, also protecting the knight on c3, so that in case of bishop on the knight the pawn structure remains without defects. But instead Karjakin doesn't care much about this pawn structure and develops the knight in the most aggressive square, that is f3. Here comes d6, short castle for white, and then bishop capture on c3. The pawn recaptures on c3, and now bishop to e6. You can, as white, you can exchange without problems on e6. You can also bring back the bishop to b3, so in case of black changing the bishop, you also improve the pawn structure. The only thing not to do is to leave the bishop here on c4 and have triple pawns. So in fact, Karjakin brings back the bishop to b3, and now h6 controlling the g5 square. Rook to e1, a new protection for e4, and so in future is also possible to push in the center with d4, and after short castle played by Nakamura, the game at move 9 is now original. h3 controlling g4, so same idea played by Karjakin, and now the knight maneuver, knight to e7. Now in this position, what to play? Karjakin will move the knight to h4. Now the idea is clear, because white wants to clear the f3 square for the queen, so that the queen and the pawn will help the next knight jump to the outpost f5. But even if this maneuver is sort of thematic in this type of position, but you notice that this is not a position like Gioco Piano or the Ruy Lopez, where white has both knights ready to attack. In this position, in my opinion, this is not the strongest maneuver. Let's go back one move. Why not d4? Let's watch what happens with d4. After d4, threatening to win the pawn, most likely black will play knight to g6, bishop captures, f captures, and now d captures on e5. After knight capture and the knight exchange, knight captures on e5, the d pawn recaptures. Also black has problems in the pawn structure. Now let's pay attention because the rook is overloaded. Queen to e2 with at least an equal game, because white can play rook to b1, bishop to a3, the rook can move to the d5 to the d file with tempo, and in my opinion there is a slight advantage for white. Let's go back to our game, because instead Karjakin moves the knight to h4 and Nakamura pushes with c5. Queen to f3 will support the knight jump, and now king to h7. With g4 Karjakin makes it clear that he wants to go directly for the black king, and here comes knight in f goes to g8, because Nakamura removes the knight from f6, so in case of g5 black isn't forced to capture with the pawn on g5. In fact, g5 comes now, but as we said, black is not forced to capture, and Nakamura plays c4, so begins a good counter plan here on the queen side. D captures on c4, rook to c8, immediately attacking the triple pawns. This is an important moment of the game, because even if c4 is under attack, but white just won this pawn, so for Karjakin losing this pawn is not a big deal. But let's notice that there are many good ideas that white can play. For example, rook in a goes to b1 with the rook on the semi-open file, also watching and threatening to capture on b7, or the second rook to d1 attacking and pinning the backward pawn, or still following the idea of attacking the king side with queen to g3. Instead, Karjakin continues with the knight jump to f5, and now queen to d7. c5, d captures on c5, rook to d1 comes with tempo, but the queen moves to c6. Knight captures on e7, the knight recapture, and what do you think that in this position is the best continuation for white? Because you notice that c4 is going to trap this bishop. So bishop captures on e6, not played by Karjakin, looks like the most logical way to handle this position, because after the queen recapture, yes, probably there is a little advantage for black, but of course white has everything to keep playing and to try something in the game. But going back to our game, in this position, Karjakin evaluates that opening, leaving the bishop into the trap, but opening, completely dismantling the pawns in front of the black king, can give him the full point. So here comes g captures on h6, but now Nakamura traps the bishop with c4, and notice that the bishop can't move to a4 because there is the queen controlling that square, and this pawn keeps advancing. H captures on g7, the rook is under attack, there is only one good move for black, and the move that Nakamura played, king capture on g7. Let's go back one move. Now, of course, not rook to g8, so bad that I also forgot the arrows, because this is already a fourth checkmate in 2. Queen to g5 we check, king captures on g7, queen to h6, checkmate. So going back to our game, Nakamura captures with the king, and now bishop to a3, attacking the knight that is a sort of skewer. Because, or it is a real skewer, because this knight is too important, because white will like to change this bishop on the knight. The knight is very important because the knight must jump to g6 to protect the king. In fact, Nakamura leaves the rook and prise and plays knight to g6, best move in this position. Black just lost the exchange, but after the rook recapture, we will notice that he's winning the game. Winning the game because what to do in this position? The bishop is lost, so best idea is to play bishop captures on c4, not played by Karjakin. After the queen recaptures on c4, rook to d3, protecting the pawn, and also with the idea of doubling the rooks on the d file. The position is lost, but this is the best try to keep playing. Let's go back to our game. Instead, Karjakin against Nakamura continues with h4. That looks a bit desperate and somewhat another mistake, because the pawn can be captured, and in fact Nakamura will capture the pawn also with tempo, and opening the h file can only favor black, that is the side with the rook ready to move to the h file. Now queen to g3 we check, but the knight simply moves back, and now f3, protecting the central pawn. And this is a good idea, but this pawn move just open this dangerous diagonal that leads to the king. Now after c capture the bishop on b3, the pawn recapture at least to open the a file for the rook, but here comes rook to h8. c4, but queen to c5, giving check from this diagonal. What to do now? The yellow arrows are really bad moves, because let's watch what happens if white now continues with queen to f2, because here there is the simple tactic, rook to h1 we check. If the king captures the rook, the queen is lost, but there is no way to avoid to lose the queen, because even after king to g2 there is rook to h2 we check. Now the king is forced to capture, queen capture, the black queen recapture, and this is game over. Let's go back to the actual game, because after queen to c5, also king to g2 is a bad idea, because white gets immediately checkmated. After bishop to h3 we check, the king must move to the h file, where there is the discovery check. Bishop to f1, discovery check. Only move is to interfere with the queen. Rook capture we check. The queen is lost, the king recapture. But now here comes the black queen. Queen to f2 we check. King to h1, and now queen to g2, checkmate. So let's go back to our game, because after queen to c5 we check, the position is now lost. Karjakin plays the best continuation, king to f1, but now Nakamura plays the best continuation on the board, because there are many good ideas that black can play. For example, also b5, where white can't capture, or after queen captures on c2. Notice that with the checkmate threats and all the other threats in this position, the game is already lost. But Nakamura finds the most natural way to improve the attack, and the move is king to f6, because I'm pinning the knight. There is a new strong piece ready to join the attack, and of course king to f6 is the best way to unpin the knight, not king back, because there is the rook check. Now queen to g1 tries to change the queens, but there is bishop to h3 with check. King to e2, the knight jumps to f4 with check. King to d2, the fourth piece enters the attack. Rook to d8 with check. And in this position, Karjakin resigns, because in any case, the white queen is lost. After king to c1, there is knight to e2, check and fork. And after king to c3, the same move is the same fork. So a very nice game played by Nakamura, who is comfortably in the first position of the standings, while Karjakin lost some important points, and at least for now is far from making the cut. I really hope that you enjoyed the game, and if you did, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because I follow all the top chess tournaments. For now, I thank you very much for watching, and see you tomorrow with a new game. Goodbye!